You probably believe that being intelligent protects you from financial mistakes, that your ability to solve complex problems, understand abstract concepts, or earn advanced degrees creates some kind of shield around your money decisions. But right now, at this very moment, that belief might be costing you more than any bad investment ever could. Because intelligence and financial wisdom operate in completely different territories of the mind, and confusing one for the other has quietly destroyed more wealth than market crashes ever have. Think about the smartest person you know personally, not someone famous, someone in your actual life, a doctor, an engineer, a professor, maybe a lawyer, someone whose intelligence is undeniable. Now ask yourself honestly, are they wealthy, not just high-earning, actually wealthy, protected, free? Most of the time the answer is no, and that is not an accident. Intelligence gives you tools. It helps you analyze data, spot patterns, construct arguments, pass tests, but financial decisions exist in a completely different dimension. They live in the space where emotion meets uncertainty, where the future refuses to reveal itself, where your own psychology becomes the primary variable. And in that space, your intelligence does not just fail to help you, it actively works against you in ways you have never been taught to recognize. Let me show you what I mean. You are trained to find answers. Your entire education rewards certainty. You learn that problems have solutions, that studying harder produces better results, that understanding something deeply gives you control over it. This works beautifully in school, it works in many careers, but money does not operate like that. Financial decisions force you to act without complete information, to accept outcomes you cannot predict, to live with consequences that unfold over decades. And your intelligent mind, trained to seek certainty, suddenly finds itself in hostile territory. So what happens? You hesitate, you research, you gather more data, you build elaborate frameworks, you wait for clarity that never arrives. While you are doing this, opportunities pass, time compounds against you instead of for you. Your need for understanding becomes the thing preventing you from building wealth. This is not stupidity. This is intelligence trapped in the wrong context, trying to apply academic rules to a game that rewards action over analysis. But it goes deeper than hesitation. Your intelligence creates a second problem that is even more dangerous. It convinces you that you are different, that the psychological traps other people fall into do not apply to you because you can think your way around them. You read about overconfidence bias and believe you are now immune to it. You learn about emotional decision-making and assume this knowledge protects you. But knowing about a cognitive bias does not make you immune to it any more than knowing about gravity lets you fly. Watch what happens when an intelligent person faces a financial decision. They start by believing they can outsmart the system. They look for edges, for opportunities others have missed, for complex strategies that feel sophisticated. And because they are intelligent, they can construct remarkably convincing arguments for whatever they want to do. They can rationalize any choice, explain away any warning sign, build logical frameworks around emotional desires. Their intelligence becomes a tool for justifying what they already wanted, not for discovering truth. This is why smart people fall for complex investment schemes more often than simple ones. A simple scam feels beneath them, but a complicated one, that engages their intellect. It makes them feel like they are using their intelligence, like they have discovered something others are too simple to understand. The complexity itself becomes appealing because it matches their self-image. They do not realize that complexity in finance usually exists to hide risk, not to generate returns. Here is something nobody tells you. Financial success requires you to accept being ordinary in your approach. It demands boring consistency over clever innovation. It rewards patient repetition over intellectual creativity. And for someone whose identity is built around being smarter than average, this feels like a kind of death. Doing what everyone knows they should do feels like wasting their potential. So they look for sophisticated alternatives, for opportunities that feel worthy of their intelligence, and they miss the simple truth that wealth is built through unglamorous behavioral consistency, not intellectual breakthroughs. Consider what happens with career choices. Intelligent people often optimize for status and intellectual challenge rather than wealth building. They take prestigious jobs that sound impressive but pay poorly. They pursue advanced degrees that increase knowledge but decrease earning. They work in fields that engage their minds but restrict their financial leverage. And they justify these choices with sophisticated reasoning about fulfillment and purpose and contribution. None of which is wrong. But it creates a strange outcome where the smartest people systematically select away from wealth building while believing they are making optimal decisions. You have probably noticed this pattern yourself. The person who can explain economic theory better than anyone but lives paycheck to paycheck. The brilliant analyst who can predict market movements yet holds no investments. The lawyer who bills $400 an hour but carries 6 figures of debt. Their intelligence is undeniable. Their financial position tells a different story. Why? Because emotional regulation matters more than analytical ability when money is involved. The capacity to act when you feel uncertain matters more than the ability to understand why you feel uncertain. The discipline, too. Repeat boring behaviors matters more than the creativity to devise new strategies. And intelligence does not automatically include any of these capacities. Sometimes it directly opposes them. Think about the last time you made a financial decision while feeling emotional. Maybe fear, maybe excitement, maybe urgency. What happened? If you are honest, you probably made a choice your calm, rational self would question. But here's what your intelligence did in that moment. It did not stop the emotion. It created sophisticated reasoning to justify the emotional choice. You felt fear and your mind instantly generated 10 logical reasons why that fear was valid. You felt excitement and suddenly you could see all the ways this opportunity was unique and time-sensitive. Your intelligence served your emotion, not your long-term interests. This is not a flaw in your intelligence. This is how human minds work. Emotions arrive first. They are faster, older, more powerful than rational thought. Your logical mind comes online second, and its primary job is not to override emotion but to explain it, to make it feel reasonable. Intelligent people are simply better at this explanation process. They generate more convincing narratives, more detailed justifications, more sophisticated frameworks around emotional decisions, which means they are less likely to recognize when emotion is driving them, not more likely. Watch what happens when markets drop. An intelligent person does not panic mindlessly. They read analysis. They study historical patterns. They understand why corrections happen, and then they sell anyway. But when you ask them why, they do not say fear. They say they recognize that the fundamental situation had changed, that their risk tolerance needed adjustment, that portfolio rebalancing was prudent. The decision is identical to panic selling. But the story they tell themselves is completely different. Their intelligence gave them a sophisticated narrative around the same emotional response everyone else had. Now layer in another element, analysis paralysis. You face a financial choice. You could act now with limited information or wait to gather more data. What does your intelligent mind tell you? Wait, learn more, understand deeper, make an informed decision. This feels responsible. It feels mature. But while you are researching what is happening, if you are considering an investment, prices are moving. If you are thinking about a career change, opportunities are closing. If you are planning to start something, someone else is gaining the advantage of earlier action and accumulated experience. You convince yourself that you are being careful, that rushing in would be foolish, that smart money waits for clarity, but clarity rarely comes. What comes instead is a new set of questions, a deeper layer of complexity, another reason to delay. And your intelligence makes this trap especially powerful because you can always find something else worth understanding, some additional factor worth considering. You are not being lazy, you are not being cowardly, you are being thorough. Except thoroughness in financial decisions often means permanent inaction disguised as preparation. Here is a truth that feels uncomfortable. Most wealth-building decisions require you to act before you feel ready, to commit before you fully understand, to move while uncertainty remains high. This violates everything your intelligence was trained to do. You were taught that understanding precedes action, that competence comes from study, that you should master something before attempting it. But financial growth happens in the opposite sequence. You act, then you learn, you commit, then you understand. You start before you are ready, and readiness develops through experience, not preparation. This creates a painful paradox for intelligent people. The very traits that made them successful in academic and professional settings become obstacles in wealth building. The perfectionism that earned them high grades prevents them from starting imperfect businesses. The risk aversion that kept them from mistakes in structured environments keeps them from necessary financial risks. The need for external validation that motivated them through school leaves them paralyzed when facing decisions with no clear authority to confirm they are right. And here is where overconfidence enters in a way you probably have not considered. You might think overconfidence means believing you will succeed at everything. But for intelligent people, overconfidence usually looks different. It shows up as believing you can figure it out later. You underestimate how hard behavior change is because you have always been able to learn new concepts quickly. You assume financial discipline will be easy once you decide to implement it because you understand it intellectually. You believe that knowing what to do is 90% of the battle, and execution is just a minor detail you will handle when the time comes. Then the time comes, and you discover that understanding compound interest does not make you patient. Knowing about lifestyle inflation does not prevent you from upgrading your life as your income grows. Reading about behavioral finance does not stop you from checking your portfolio obsessively during volatility. The gap between knowledge and behavior turns out to be enormous. But your intelligence hid that gap from you because you are accustomed to knowledge translating directly into capability. Consider education itself. You spent years, maybe decades, in academic environments. You learned to value credentials, to respect institutional authority, to believe that official knowledge from official sources is superior to practical experience. This serves you well in many domains, but it creates a blind spot in financial decisions. You trust the advice of credentialed experts even when their incentives do not align with yours. You fall Conventional wisdom from prestigious institutions, even when that wisdom systematically fails ordinary people. You dismiss practical knowledge from less educated sources because it lacks academic validation, even when it works. The financial advisor with impressive credentials who earns fees regardless of your outcomes. The economist from a top university whose theories sound brilliant but whose personal finances you never see. The prestigious institution that teaches financial concepts but somehow graduates students who cannot manage their own money. Your intelligence makes you respect these sources more than you should, and dismiss unconventional wisdom more than you should, because you are trained to value official knowledge over practical results. Meanwhile, someone with less formal education but better behavioral instincts quietly builds wealth. They do not overthink. They do not wait for perfect understanding. They start simple, stay consistent, avoid stupidity, and let time do the work. They are not smarter. They are not better informed. They are just free from the specific traps that intelligence creates. And over decades, the results compound in their favor while you are still researching the optimal strategy. You have probably felt this yourself at some point. The frustration of knowing what you should do but not doing it. The confusion of understanding principles but seeing no results. The weird disconnect between your intellectual capabilities and your financial position. This is not failure. This is the predictable outcome of bringing the wrong type of intelligence to a problem that requires different skills entirely. Financial wisdom is not about being smart. It is about emotional regulation under uncertainty. It is about consistent behavior despite changing feelings. It is about accepting good enough when perfect is not available. It is about acting with incomplete information and adjusting as you learn. None of these are intellectual skills. Are psychological and behavioral capacities that exist independently of analytical ability. And here is what makes this especially painful. You probably have less practice with these skills than someone less intelligent, because your intelligence let you succeed in environments where these skills did not matter. You could think your way through school, you could analyze your way into a good career, but you cannot think your way into behavioral consistency. You cannot analyze your way past emotional decision-making. And because you have relied on intelligence to solve problems your entire life, you do not have the developed capacity in these other areas that someone who could not rely on pure intelligence was forced to develop. This is not permanent, these are skills like any other, but developing them requires something that intelligent people often resist, accepting that you are a beginner at something, that your intelligence does not transfer, that you need to start simple probably. Simpler than feels worthy of your capabilities, that you need to build boring habits before attempting sophisticated strategies, that you need to focus on behavior before optimization. The person who starts simple and stays consistent will build more wealth than the person who designs the perfect plan but never implements it. The person who accepts that they do not fully understand but acts anyway will learn faster than the person who studies endlessly but never starts. The person who makes small mistakes early and adjusts will progress further than the person who avoids all mistakes by avoiding all action. But accepting this requires releasing the identity of being the person who figures it all out first, who gets it right the first time, who succeeds through intelligence rather than through trial and error. So what does this mean for you right now? You are probably thinking about your own situation. Maybe you are recognizing patterns. Maybe you are feeling defensive. Maybe you are already planning how you will do this differently. But notice what your mind is doing right now. Is it looking for the sophisticated solution? Is it trying to outsmart the problem I am describing? Is it assuming that now that you understand this trap you are immune to it? Because that would be your intelligence doing exactly what I have been describing. Creating the illusion that awareness equals immunity, that understanding the problem is the same as solving it, that you can think your way past psychological realities that affect everyone including you, and that belief, that specific flavor of overconfidence that comes from being smart, might be the most expensive thing you never recognized as a cost. The truth is simpler and harder than you want it to be. Financial success requires you to do boring things consistently over long periods. It requires you to act before you fully understand. It requires you to accept uncertainty, to tolerate mistakes, to prioritize behavior over analysis. It requires you to be ordinary in your approach even if you are extraordinary in other areas. And it requires you to recognize that your intelligence is not the advantage you thought it was. In this specific domain, it might be creating more problems than it solves. So here is the question that matters. Are you willing to be simple, to repeat basic behaviors that feel beneath your intellectual capability, to start before you're ready and learn through doing, to accept that financial wisdom comes from behavioral consistency, not intellectual understanding? Because until you can answer yes to that, your intelligence will keep serving your ego instead of your wealth. And years from now, you will still be smart, still well-informed, and still wondering why that never translated into financial freedom. The uncomfortable truth is that wealth building does not care about your intelligence. It cares about your behavior over time. and recognizing that gap, really internalizing it, is the first step toward closing it, but only if you are willing to set aside the identity that intelligence built and develop the capacities that intelligence cannot provide.